What's up guys, my name is Zane. I am a knife maker from Waxhaw, North Carolina, and I have just started a YouTube account to post some of the progress things that I go along with, and I thought, what better of a way to kick it off than making some Mokume Gane. So for those of you that don't know what Mokume Gane is, it is the ancient Japanese technique of forge welding non-ferrous metals together, such as gold, silver, copper, nickel, so on and so forth. And that's what we're going to be doing today using good old American quarters. So as mentioned before, this is my first YouTube video, so if you guys have any advice or comments on what I can do to improve how I'm doing things around here, love to hear them. And also be sure to like and subscribe if you guys enjoy this kind of content, and follow my Instagram, which is ZJB_knives. Let's get into it. So here we have our quarters. We're going to use about 12 or 15 when making our billet. And we're about to clean them using acetone. Cleaning is one of the most important steps that you can take when making mokume, because it ensures that the quarters are grime free and ready to make a clean forge weld and not have any delaminations or anything like that. So we're going to stir them up, make sure everything gets nice and covered, strip the paint off of our pencil. Now we're going to dry them off, make sure that everything looks like it should. Sometimes the more dirty quarters still have a little bit of grime stuck on them, so we're going to check through, make sure everything's good. I know I probably shouldn't stick my hand in the acetone, but the pliers just weren't doing it for me. So we're just gonna dry these off. Oh yeah, fold that towel. So now we're gonna wrap them. So I make sure not to touch the center of the quarters, just to keep finger oils off of them. But touching the outside of the quarters is not a big deal. We can do that just fine. That's not going to affect how it goes. So I usually start off with about 1.5 feet of wire and center it on the quarters, wrap it around, and I'll fold it on the other side in the center and give it a nice twist and pinch it shut with those pliers to make sure that it's, holding them together nice and parallel. I want to make sure everything's lined up. And I will fold it a second time around that stack, so we're kind of making a plus sign. So just making sure that we have nice full coverage so it's not going to squeeze out one side when we go to hammer it all together. And just to be sure, I'm about to do it a third time, so we are surrounded on 6 sides, just to fully ensure that nothing is going to happen when we go to forge weld these together. Alright, so here I am about to throw these into the forge. I have it running on about 5 psi right now, maybe about 6, and that's about where you need it to keep the quarters from melting. Any higher than that it will melt. And one of the key things is not to keep it under the direct burner of the forge, but rather to the side to keep it from getting too much direct heat on a couple quarters rather than the whole billet itself. So flipping it around a couple times, and I'm going to let it get to a nice bright orange, and the quarters will look somewhat shiny, and that's when you know that it's about ready to forge weld, because that means it's partially melted but not fully a liquid yet, and that's where you need it to be. So pulling them out now, giving it a couple of rather light taps just to tack the welds, and then going a little bit heavier with the strokes after that. The top quarter looks a little bit dark. That's because that one didn't forge weld with the rest of it. You want it to have a nice uniform color, and that way you can tell that everything is one solid piece and it's retaining heat the same way. Oh no. Alright, so now that those welds are set and it's hammered together pretty solid, we're going to let it heat back up again to the temperature that we need it to be, and we're just going to keep flattening it back out so that we can apply the pattern with the drill press shortly after that. So we are going to be doing a double raindrop pattern today. So we're going to drill some holes, not too far in, just a couple of millimeters, just past the tip of the drill bit, all the way around the circular billet that we've just created. And once we forge it back flat, it'll give a nice, kind of like a bullseye pattern all over the piece, which will look pretty cool. And we're going to do that twice. So here you can see, just filling up the whole thing as much as I can. You can actually see, if you look close, some of those layers popping through. So now that we've patterned our piece halfway, we're going to throw it back in the forge, let it heat up, and we're going to smash it back flat. And we're also going to square up the billet a little bit to more of a rectangular shape as opposed to the circle that it is now. So we're going in for the second round of patterning. What I've done is I've marked out some holes where I'm going to drill. So I'm trying to drill the inverse pattern of what I drilled last time. So any space that's actually missing any pattern, we're trying to fill that in now. Any gaps that we're missing. And it should give us a really interesting pattern when it's done. Now that it's been compressed even more by hammering, it's going to have a lot more layers to it because it's a little bit thinner. So, like I said, just going along, filling in the pattern. Ooh wee, this is going to be a cool one. So we're going to put it right back into the forge, let it heat up, and hammer it flat just like we did the last time. Seal up those holes, and it should look really, really nice when it's done. I've done this pattern before and used it on some knife bolsters and other similar things, so I've gotten pretty used to doing it, but it never looks the same. No matter how much I try, it never looks the exact same, which is something really unique about it, I think. So we're squaring it up just a little bit more. It's never going to be perfectly rectangle, which is okay. It doesn't need to be. All we need to do is just keep it a little bit more flattened on each side. I think it looks a little bit nicer that way. So this billet is actually going to my friend Chris Adelhart. He's a knife maker, and he's going to be using it for some of his knives, which I'm really excited to see. So something that you'll want to keep in mind is to not hammer Mokume too much while it's cold, because it likes to delaminate sometimes if it's not hot enough. So I've had it happen a few times before. It's always annoying. Sometimes you can recover from it, and sometimes it just does permanent damage, which you won't want to do, especially if you put a lot of time and effort into working on this.
Hey, where are you at? Come back over here, boy. Huh?
Whatever you do, don't get my camera.
You're going for now.
Alright, so here we are using an 80 grit belt to sand off all the oxides on there to reveal the pattern. So what I'm going to be doing to show up the pattern, rather than giving it a patina to make it show up, I'm going to be using a blowtorch to darken the copper and it should pop really well once we get around to it. But I'm out of every other grit belt, so we're using an 80 grit belt, and then we're going to hand sand it the rest of the way. So here we are using the little aluminum sanding block, kicking it off at 120 grit. And I think we're going to take this piece all the way up to 400 grit, but it is by no means a perfect satin finish. You can still see some deep gouges in it and all that, but for what it is and what I needed it for, it will work just fine. So we're just going to hit it with the blowtorch. Nothing fancy, just a standard grill starter propane blowtorch. You can see all that moisture burning out of the material there. So we're going to pass that heat nice and evenly over the piece that we're working on, and it should start to darken up pretty soon to more of a, a darker brown color. So there it goes. Wow. This piece really came out much better than I thought it would. Aside from some of the scratches that were left in there from my attempt at a satin finish, I'm really pleased with how this came out. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and if you have any other ideas that you want me to do in the future, be sure to leave those in the comments section below. I will see y'all next time.
Give me a good outro.
I'm about to head out.